The unexpected encounter. Zira was on her first mission. As a young alien from the distant planet of Veloria, she was eager to explore the universe. For years, she had studied the galaxies, their stars, and planets, but nothing fascinated her more than Earth. Earth was so different from her home. Its people were strange, its creatures unusual, and its landscapes completely unlike anything she had ever seen. Zira had learned about Earth through the ancient scrolls of Veloria, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. She had come to Earth for one purpose: to study its most intriguing species, the humans. Zira's ship landed quietly in the middle of a small forest near a quiet town. The air was fresh and smelled of earth and trees, but there was something about the human world that made her heart race. She stepped out of her ship, her feet touching the ground for the first time on a planet so different from hers. She was careful to stay hidden, blending in with the surroundings. She wore a cloaking suit that made her look like a shadow, invisible to human eyes. Zira's mission was simple: observe. She was to gather information on humans and their anatomy. She had heard the rumors that their bodies were very different from hers, that they had strange features, and even more curious, strange ways of living. This fascinated her. She wanted to learn more, and she wanted to see it all firsthand. She wandered through the forest for a while, observing the animals and plants, but it wasn't until she saw him that her heart skipped a beat. Jack was walking along a path in the woods. He was tall and had an athletic build, his dark hair messy from the wind. He seemed unaware of the world around him, lost in his thoughts. Zira froze when she saw him. His body was unlike anything she had ever seen before. She had studied human anatomy through her star maps and technology, but seeing it in person was completely different. His limbs, his posture, his movements, all of it intrigued her. Zira's first instinct was to hide and watch from afar. She was a scientist, after all. But something in her pushed her forward. She was drawn to him. It was strange, almost as if there was an invisible pull between them. She couldn't resist. She stepped forward, carefully making her way toward Jack. Her footsteps were silent, like whispers in the wind. As she got closer, she noticed how Jack seemed to carry himself, how his muscles flexed with each step, how his skin appeared so delicate and soft compared to hers. Zira's heart raced. She had to learn more. She had to understand. As Jack continued to walk, lost in thought, he didn't notice Zira approaching him. It wasn't until she was almost right behind him that he turned around, sensing something was off. Jack's eyes widened as he saw a young woman standing there. She was beautiful, with striking features that didn't look quite human. Her skin was a pale shade of blue, and her long hair shimmered like the stars. She had eyes that glowed faintly, and Jack immediately felt an odd chill run down his spine. "Who are you?" Jack asked, his voice a little shaky. He hadn't expected to see anyone out here in the woods, especially someone who looked so unusual. Zira stood still for a moment, surprised by his question. She had never met a human before, but she had read enough to know that they might not take kindly to her appearance. Still, curiosity won out, and she smiled softly. "I am." "From far away," Zira said, her voice calm and smooth. She had studied human languages and dialects, so her words were clear, though slightly accented. "I'm studying Earth, its creatures. And you?" Jack blinked in confusion. "You're studying me?" Zira nodded, her eyes bright with interest. "Yes. Your anatomy, your body, your biology. It's all so fascinating to me." Jack took a step back, suddenly feeling uncomfortable. "I don't know what you mean, but you don't look like anyone I've ever seen before." Zira smiled again, but this time it was a little more secretive. "I am not from here, but I come in peace. I just want to learn about your species." Jack's mind raced. His first thought was to run, but something about Zira held him in place. There was an aura around her that was calming, almost hypnotic. He couldn't explain it, but he felt drawn to her in a way that didn't make sense. "All right," Jack said slowly, still unsure of what to do. I don't know why you're here, but I guess I can't stop you from learning. Zira's eyes sparkled with excitement. She had never met a human who was so open to her presence. It was perfect. This human, Jack, would help her understand everything she needed to know about their strange, fascinating anatomy. "Thank you," Zira said softly. "I will need your help, but I promise I will not harm you." Jack nodded, although he was still unsure about everything. He had no idea that this encounter would change his life forever. Zira didn't just want to learn. She had a hidden purpose, one that Jack couldn't yet understand. And soon, he would realize that his body, his very anatomy, was something that Zira couldn't ignore. The encounter had only just begun. Zira's plan. Jack had agreed to help her. He wasn't sure why, but there was something about Zira that made him feel like he couldn't say no. Maybe it was her alien beauty, or the way her eyes gleamed with excitement. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but he felt strangely compelled to find out. The next day, Zira appeared again, this time in a more open area of the forest. Jack was waiting for her, still trying to wrap his head around everything. He had told himself he was just being helpful, but the truth was, something about her felt too powerful, too intriguing. As she approached, Zira's movements were calm, almost graceful, as though she didn't have a care in the world. Jack, on the other hand, was tense. He had told himself this was just a research study, nothing more, but the feeling in the pit of his stomach wouldn't go away. Zira smiled as she stopped in front of him, her presence somehow making the air feel heavier. "I hope you're ready for today," she said, her voice smooth like silk. "We will begin the real tests." Jack frowned, feeling a knot tighten in his chest. "Tests? What do you mean, exactly?" Zira's smile deepened, but there was something almost mysterious about it. "I need to understand how your body works," she explained, her voice almost hypnotic. "Your muscles, your heart, your organs. Your species is so different from mine, and it holds secrets that could save my people." Jack blinked, unsure if he heard her right. "Secrets? What are you talking about? Why do you need to know all that?" Zira's expression softened, though there was a flicker of something behind her eyes. "My planet, Valoria, is dying. We are losing our ability to reproduce. Our biology has been deteriorating for centuries. But when I studied your species, I saw something incredible. Your anatomy is unlike anything I've ever seen. You have strength, energy, life force that we have lost." Jack's confusion deepened, but he couldn't help but feel a strange sympathy for her. "So you're saying you want to study my body because it can help your planet?" he asked cautiously. Zira nodded slowly, her eyes locking onto his. "Yes, but it's more than that. There's something about humans that is irresistible. Your biology holds the key to a solution I haven't even fully understood yet. That's why I came here. And that's why you must help me." Jack stepped back slightly, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm not sure about this. I mean, you're asking me to let you study me. What if something goes wrong? What if I can't handle it?" Zira's face softened with understanding. She took a small step closer, closing the distance between them. "I promise you," she said, her voice soothing. "I will be careful. I won't hurt you. You're the only human I've ever met who has agreed to this. If you help me, you may not just save my people. You could change the course of an entire planet's future." Jack hesitated, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. He didn't want to be used, but he couldn't ignore the seriousness in her eyes. There was something about Zira that made him want to trust her. But was it just her charm, or was there something more to this situation? Before Jack could speak, Zira raised her hand, and a strange device appeared in her palm, glowing faintly with blue light. "This," she said, "is a bioscanner. It will map your entire anatomy in ways I cannot do with my own eyes. It won't hurt, but the data it gathers could be crucial." Jack's heart raced. He wasn't sure what was happening, but a part of him felt like he couldn't say no. He nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. But I'm trusting you. Don't make me regret this. Zira smiled warmly, though her eyes held an intensity that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. I promise you, Jack, this is only the beginning of something much greater. The moment she activated the scanner, Jack felt a strange warmth spread across his body. It wasn't painful, but it was invasive. The device hovered just above his skin, glowing softly as it moved from his head to his feet. Jack stood still, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread. What was happening to him? As the scanner finished, Zira's eyes lit up with fascination. Incredible, she murmured, staring at the readings that appeared on the small screen of her device. Your body is even more extraordinary than I could have imagined. There's so much potential here. Jack tried to ignore the strange feeling creeping through his body. What do you mean by potential? What does this mean for me? Zira's smile faded into a look of deep concentration. It means your body holds the answers. The solutions. You, Jack, have something inside you that could save my people. Something I need to understand completely. Jack's head swirled with confusion. He had agreed to help, but now it felt like something much bigger was at play. What if Zira was hiding more than she had told him? Was he just a tool in her grand plan? Or was he really the key to saving her planet? He took a deep breath, trying to push the fear aside. So what happens now? Zira's eyes gleamed with an intense focus. Now, she said, we begin the real tests, and from this moment on, your life will never be the same. Jack felt a chill run down his spine as the gravity of her words sank in. He had stepped into something far bigger than he could have imagined, and he wasn't sure he could get up now. The first test. The air was thick with tension as Jack stood before Zira, his heart pounding in his chest. The world around him seemed to fade as he tried to wrap his mind around everything that had happened in the past few days. What had started as a simple encounter with a curious alien had now turned into something far more intense. Zira had promised him no harm, but the uncertainty lingered. Zira had been quiet for a while, her focus entirely on the strange device in her hand. It hummed with energy, its glowing lights flickering as she adjusted the settings. Jack couldn't help but feel nervous. He had agreed to help her, but this was beginning to feel more like an experiment than a simple study. Are you sure this will be safe? Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes darted to the device in her hand, the pulsing light reflecting in his nervous gaze. Zira's expression softened, but there was still a fire in her eyes, a fire of determination. I will be careful, Jack. I promise. This is just the first test. You will feel a slight sensation, but it will not harm you. Jack wasn't so sure. The way she spoke, so calmly, so confidently, it made him feel like he had no choice but to trust her. But that uneasy feeling in his gut still didn't go away. He was standing at the edge of something he couldn't fully understand, and there was no going back now. Zira moved closer to him, her steps soundless, her presence overpowering in a way he couldn't explain. She stopped just in front of him, her eyes fixed on his as she placed her hand gently on his chest. Her touch sent an unexpected jolt through his body, something warm and tingling that made his heart race faster than before. This will be quick, she said softly, almost as if to reassure him. Though it didn't completely ease his nerves. I need to scan your core energy. Jack frowned, confused. Core energy. What do you mean by that? Zira didn't answer him right away. Instead, she activated the device in her hand, and the soft hum of technology filled the air. The machine whirred to life, its light growing brighter. Zira's eyes locked onto the screen that appeared before her, showing complex data that Jack couldn't comprehend. It didn't matter. He just wanted it over with. As the device hovered above Jack's body, he could feel a strange pressure in the air around him. His skin tingled where Zira's hand had been, and a subtle warmth spread from his chest outward. He looked down at the device, watching as it emitted a soft blue light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. "It's working," Zira murmured, more to herself than to Jack. She seemed fascinated, almost mesmerized by the data appearing before her. But as the seconds stretched on, Jack began to feel something more than just the warmth. Something deep inside of him shifted, like a current moving through his veins. His body began to feel strange. Not painful, but certainly unusual. A sense of energy that he had never felt before coursed through him, building slowly in his chest, then radiating outward. His muscles tightened without his control, and his breath became shallow. "What's happening to me?" Jack gasped, his voice filled with panic. "This doesn't feel right." Zira's gaze flickered to him, but her eyes didn't seem concerned. If anything, they burned with curiosity. "It's just the beginning, Jack. Your core energy is unlike any human I've ever encountered. I can feel it. It's alive." Jack's heart raced faster. "Alive? What do you mean?" Before Zira could respond, the sensation in Jack's body grew stronger, almost overwhelming. His muscles twitched uncontrollably, and he staggered back, trying to catch his breath. "Stop. I don't know if I can handle this." But Zira didn't stop. Instead, she stepped forward, her hand hovering near his chest as the device continued to scan him. "You're doing fine," she said, her voice calm and reassuring, but her tone betrayed a hint of excitement. "This is exactly what I needed. Your energy is incredible, Jack." Jack's mind raced. What was happening? Why did he feel this way? His body was reacting in ways he couldn't control, and every instinct inside him screamed that he should pull away, that this wasn't right. "I don't know if I can take much more," Jack said, struggling to steady himself. The pressure in his chest seemed to intensify with every passing second, and his vision blurred at the edges. "Please, Zira. I don't think this is safe." Zira's eyes softened for a moment, and she finally deactivated the device. The light from the scanner faded, and the weight that had been pressing down on Jack's chest lifted slightly, though he still felt dizzy. His heart pounded as he steadied himself against the nearest tree, trying to regain his balance. Zira took a step back, her expression a mix of awe and something else, something darker. "I told you it wouldn't harm you, Jack, but I also told you that this was only the beginning." Jack's head spun as he tried to process what had just happened. He could still feel the residual energy in his body, pulsing just beneath his skin. It was as if something had awakened inside him, something powerful and dangerous. "What are you doing to me?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. "This is not just a simple scan. What's happening to me, Zira?" Zira looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and excitement. "You're not just a test subject, Jack. You're part of something much greater than you realize. Your body holds the answers to something that could save my entire planet. But the process won't be easy, and you'll have to go through more before you fully understand." Jack took a deep breath, feeling his pulse in his throat. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore. This isn't what I agreed to." Zira's eyes softened, and she took a step toward him, her voice low and sincere. "I never meant to hurt you, Jack. But the truth is, I can't stop now. We're already in this together, and you're the only one who can help me." Jack's mind whirled, and he could feel the overwhelming power still simmering beneath the surface of his skin. He wasn't sure what was happening to him, but he knew one thing for certain. Zira wasn't just interested in his body. She had an agenda, and he was about to get dragged deeper into her mysterious world, whether he wanted to or not. Unwanted changes. The days after the first test felt like a blur. Jack's body had never been the same since that strange scan. At first, the effects seemed subtle, tiny things that he could easily ignore. But as time passed, the changes began to become harder to dismiss. It started with his muscles. He'd wake up every morning feeling stronger, as if his body had been infused with energy overnight. He couldn't explain it, but his strength was different now. Unnatural, almost alien. His arms felt like they could lift anything, his legs like they could run for miles. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the way his body had started to react to Zira. Every time she came close, he felt it. A surge of heat beneath his skin, a strange pulling sensation deep in his chest. It wasn't just attraction. It was something more primal, more intense. It was as if his body was being rewired, reprogrammed by her presence. Jack had tried to ignore it, telling himself it was just his mind playing tricks on him, but every time he saw her, it got worse. One evening, Zira came to meet him in the same forest where they had first met. She had promised to keep things simple, but Jack wasn't so sure anymore. He had spent the past few days researching everything he could about his own anatomy and about alien biology. The more he read, the more he realized that his body was changing in ways he couldn't understand. He didn't know if it was because of the scan or something else, but it wasn't normal. Not by human standards. As soon as he saw her, his pulse quickened. She looked at him with those glowing eyes, and for a moment, Jack could barely breathe. Her beauty, her presence, it was overwhelming. And yet, there was something else. Something deeper, more dangerous. "Jack," Zira said softly, her voice smooth and calming. "I've been analyzing the results from the last test. Your body is responding to the energy I've been channeling. You're adapting to it." Jack's heart sank. Adapting? What does that mean? What have you done to me, Zira? Zira took a step closer, and Jack could feel the heat rising in his chest again, his skin flushing. This time, it was more intense than before. His breath hitched. "It's not something I intended," she said, her eyes locking onto his. "But your body is changing in response to my presence. It's as if you're becoming attuned to the energy that I carry." Jack's mind raced, his pulse thundering in his ears. "No, this isn't right. I didn't sign up for this. I agreed to help, but not to become some kind of experiment." Zira's expression softened, but her gaze remained steady. "You have to understand, Jack. The energy from your body, it's not just an accident. Your biology, your anatomy, it's incredibly unique. It's adapting to the energy I'm giving you. And in return, you're growing stronger." Jack staggered back, shaking his head. "Stronger? But this feels wrong. I don't want to be your test subject anymore, Zira. I want to go home." Zira's eyes flickered with something Jack couldn't place, regret. Or was it determination? "I wish you could, Jack, but it's too late for that. You're already part of the process now. The changes are irreversible." Jack looked down at his hands, his breath coming faster now. His skin felt like it was on fire. It was as if his entire body was buzzing with energy that he couldn't control. It was too much, too intense. "What have you done to me?" Jack whispered, his voice shaking. His heart pounded in his chest, and his muscles tightened in ways he couldn't explain. Zira stepped closer again, her fingers gently brushing his arm. "I haven't done anything, Jack. Your body is responding to the energy naturally. I've only helped guide it." But Jack could feel it. The changes were taking over his body, spreading like wildfire. The more Zira spoke, the more he felt his humanity slipping away. This wasn't just about understanding human anatomy anymore. This was about something far more dangerous. "I can't stop it," Jack said, his voice low and frantic. "Can't you see what's happening? I don't want this. I don't want to become whatever this is." Zira's face was a mask of sorrow now, her eyes filled with something close to regret. "I didn't want this either, Jack. But your body, your energy, it's responding in a way I didn't expect. And I can't stop it either. Not without causing irreparable harm to both of us." Jack's head swam. His vision blurred at the edges as the energy inside him grew stronger. He could feel his muscles straining, his bones shifting, something inside him stretching and pulling. He didn't know how to fight it, didn't know how to stop it. All he knew was that his body was becoming something else. "Please, Zira," Jack gasped, his voice desperate. "You have to help me. You have to fix this. Zira's expression faltered, and for a brief moment, Jack saw vulnerability in her eyes. She reached out, her hands hovering over his body, as if unsure of how to help. I don't know how to fix it, Jack. The energy is too powerful. But I can't leave you like this. Jack's skin burned beneath her touch. It was like he was on the edge of something he couldn't control, something dark and overwhelming. His vision darkened at the edges, and he felt his strength slip away. I didn't choose this, Jack whispered, barely able to speak. I didn't choose any of this. Zira looked at him, her eyes filled with a strange mix of guilt and awe. I know, and I'm sorry, but now that the energy has taken root inside you, we have to find a way to control it. Together. But Jack knew deep down that it might already be too late. Whatever had started as an innocent request for help had turned into something far more dangerous, and as the changes took hold, he realized that Zira's plan was not just about saving her people, it was about reshaping his entire existence. A sudden revelation. The forest was eerily quiet as Jack tried to regain control over his racing thoughts. The strange energy inside him still buzzed beneath his skin, stronger than ever. Zira had been silent for the last few hours, her face etched with an emotion Jack couldn't quite decipher. Guilt, regret, or was it something else? He paced in the clearing, his muscles twitching uncontrollably, as if his body had a mind of its own. The changes were taking him over, and it felt like he was losing touch with the world around him. The worst part, Zira hadn't been able to fix anything. She had told him they could try to control it, but the truth was, the energy within him seemed to have a life of its own now. Zira had been watching him quietly from a distance, her expression unreadable. Jack could feel her eyes on him, but he didn't dare look at her. Every time he did, that strange pull returned, making his heart race in ways that felt unnatural. He hated that feeling. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something more invasive. He was beginning to wonder if he could ever escape her influence. Finally, Zira spoke, her voice breaking the silence like a sudden gust of wind. Jack, I need to tell you something. Something important. Jack turned sharply, his heart sinking at the intensity in her gaze. What is it? What could be worse than what's already happening to me? Zira took a step closer, her eyes locked on his. It's not just about your anatomy, Jack. It's not about your strength or your energy. Your body. It's connected to something much greater, something I didn't fully understand until now. Jack's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? What do you mean, connected to something greater? Zira's voice faltered for just a moment, as if she was trying to find the right words. I didn't come to Earth just to study human biology. That was part of it, yes, but there was more. The truth is, your species, you're not just biologically unique, Jack. You're a key to something ancient, something that could save my people. Jack's mind spun. A key? What do you mean, a key? Zira's expression became serious, almost urgent. You were chosen, Jack. Your genetics, your biology, are tied to a force older than both our planets. The energy inside you isn't just a result of the tests I performed. It's been dormant inside humans for centuries, waiting to be awakened, and I awakened it. Jack shook his head, trying to process her words. What are you saying? That I'm some kind of experiment? That you used me to unlock something in my own body? Zira didn't answer him right away. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes softening as if she could sense the confusion and fear in him. I didn't want this, Jack. I didn't know this would happen. When I scanned you, I only intended to learn more about your species, not to unleash something this powerful. But now that it's awake, I can't stop it. And neither can you. Jack took a step back, his heart hammering in his chest. This is insane. You're telling me that I'm connected to some kind of ancient power, that I've been chosen for something bigger than I can even understand. Zira nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. Yes, you were chosen by fate, Jack. Your body holds the key to saving my people. The energy inside you, it has the power to restore my planet, to give us back what we lost. Jack's mind raced. And you couldn't have told me this sooner. You kept this from me, Zira. All I wanted to do was help you, but now I'm part of some plan I don't even understand. Zira's face was filled with regret, her voice tinged with desperation. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to explain what was happening. I never meant for you to become this vessel. But now that the energy is awakened inside you, I don't know how to control it. And if it gets out of hand, it could destroy us both. Jack's mind was reeling. He had never asked for any of this. He had never signed up to be part of some cosmic plan. But the way Zira looked at him, there was no denying it. She truly believed that he held the power to change everything for her people. So, what now? Jack's voice cracked with frustration. Now that you've awakened this power inside me, what am I supposed to do? Become some kind of superhero for your planet? Zira took a deep breath, her eyes searching his, as if trying to convey something deeper than words. I didn't want to do this, but the truth is, we need you, Jack. My people are dying. Our species is on the brink of extinction, and your body, your energy, is the only hope we have left. Jack looked down at his hands, feeling the faint buzzing of energy inside him. It was no longer just a small twinge. It was a raging current, unstoppable and raw. He could feel it in every muscle, in every beat of his heart. And though the thought of using it terrified him, there was no denying that something inside him had been awakened, something ancient and powerful. But at what cost? Why me? Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. Why not someone else? Why did you have to use me? Zira's gaze softened, and she stepped closer, her presence almost overwhelming. Because, Jack, you're the one. You've always been the one. Your species was always meant to be the key to saving my world. You are not just a human. You are the last hope of an entire civilization. Jack felt a strange mix of anger and fear flood through him. He had been used, manipulated, and now he was part of something he couldn't control. Yet beneath the anger, a small voice inside him whispered that Zira wasn't lying. There was truth in her words. His body, his very essence, was part of something larger than he could ever have imagined. I didn't choose this, Jack whispered, his voice shaky. But I don't know if I can stop it now. Zira's eyes filled with something unreadable. Was it hope? Or was it something darker, something more desperate? You don't have to stop it, Jack. You just have to help me guide it. Together, we can save everything. But time is running out. And in that moment, Jack realized that there was no turning back. The power inside him, the energy that had been awakened, it wasn't just part of him anymore. It was part of everything. And whether he liked it or not, he had a choice to make. Would he embrace his new fate and help Zira save her people? Or would he fight against the force inside him, even if it meant losing everything? The answers weren't clear yet, but one thing was certain. The path ahead would change everything. The struggle. Jack felt the weight of his own body like never before. The energy inside him, once a quiet hum, now roared with power. It surged through his veins like fire, uncontrolled and wild, making every movement feel like an effort. His skin was hypersensitive, his senses heightened to a level he couldn't handle. The power he had been unwillingly gifted, or cursed with, was growing stronger, and he was starting to feel like a prisoner in his own body. Zira's words echoed in his mind, each one pushing him further into a corner. You're the one, Jack. You were always meant to be the key. But the truth was, Jack didn't want to be anyone's key. Not for Zira, not for her people, and certainly not for a planet he barely knew. He had been manipulated, dragged into a destiny that wasn't his own. And now, it was too late to back out. He stumbled into the clearing where Zira had been waiting for him. She was standing still, her eyes locked onto him with that same calm, collected expression. But beneath the surface, Jack could see the flicker of concern, maybe even fear. "Jack," Zira began, but Jack didn't give her a chance to speak. "No, Zira," he interrupted, his voice harsh, his breath coming in short bursts. "I'm done. I can't keep doing this. You've turned me into something I'm not. This power, it's not mine to control. I can't do this anymore." Zira stepped forward, her eyes filled with regret, but also with an intensity that made Jack's heart skip a beat. "You don't understand, Jack. This is bigger than both of us. If you don't help me now, everything we've worked for will be lost. The energy inside you, it's the only hope I have left to save my people. It's the only way." Jack's chest tightened at her words. The weight of her plea hung in the air like a storm cloud, but something deep inside him was resisting. He couldn't be her solution. He couldn't let her use him like this. "No," Jack said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I'm not your solution. You're using me, Zira, and I won't let you control me anymore. Not like this." Zira's face faltered, but only for a moment. Her eyes narrowed, and Jack could see the change in her, something cold, calculating, as if she was weighing her next move. "You don't have a choice, Jack," she said softly, almost as if trying to soothe him, but there was an edge to her voice now, something darker. "The energy inside you has already begun to change everything. You're bound to this now. You can't escape it. You can't fight it." The words stung, and Jack could feel his blood boiling, the power within him flaring to life. His body reacted before he could think. His fists clenched, his muscles tensing. He could feel it, the primal force that Zira had awakened in him. It was not just power, it was something deeper, something more instinctive. He wasn't sure what it was, but he knew one thing for sure. If Zira was trying to control him, it was time to break free. Without warning, Jack stepped toward her, his eyes blazing with defiance. "I don't care what you think, Zira. I won't let you use me like this. I'll fight you if I have to." Zira's gaze hardened, and for the first time, Jack saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She raised her hand, the familiar blue energy swirling around her fingers. "I didn't want it to come to this, Jack, but you're forcing my hand." The air around them crackled with tension. Jack could feel the pulse of her energy as it clashed with the power inside him. It was like two forces pulling at him from opposite directions, one urging him to give in, the other to fight back. And in that moment, he knew that this wasn't just a battle of wills. It was a fight for his very soul. "I'm not your weapon," Jack snarled, his voice low and dangerous. "You can't control me." Zira hesitated, her hand still raised. But she didn't move. She studied him, her expression unreadable. "You don't understand. I can't let you go, Jack. I've already seen what you're capable of. The energy inside you. It's the only chance I have to save my people. You are the key. And I won't lose you now." Jack's mind raced, his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that she was just trying to save her people, that this wasn't about using him for her own ends. But deep down, he knew that he couldn't trust her anymore. She had lied to him, manipulated him into becoming something he wasn't, and now she was trying to force him to be a part of her plan. "I'm done with this," Jack said, his voice firm. "I'm not a weapon, and I won't be anyone's pawn. If you think you can control me, you're wrong." He turned away from her, his fists clenched, his body trembling with the raw power coursing through him. The energy inside him was still there, still growing, but now it was his to control. He wasn't going to let Zira, or anyone else, take that from him. "You can't escape it," Zira's voice called after him, her tone strained. "You're already too far gone, Jack. There's no going back." Jack didn't look back. He didn't have to. He knew what he had to do. He had to break free, not just from Zira, but from the energy that had taken over his body. It wasn't going to be easy, and he wasn't sure how he would do it. But one thing was clear. The struggle wasn't over yet. And no matter what it took, Jack was going to fight for his freedom. The final decision. The forest was silent, save for the occasional rustling of the wind in the trees. Jack stood at the center of the clearing, his chest heaving, his fists clenched by his sides. The energy within him still crackled, sharp and potent, but it wasn't as overwhelming as before. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jack felt like he was in control. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Zira stood a few feet away, her face a mask of conflict. Her eyes, once filled with hope, now held a deeper sorrow, a weight that seemed to press down on her shoulders. She was torn between her desire to save her people and the undeniable truth that she had pushed Jack too far. The balance between them had shifted, and Jack could feel it in the air. The tension between them had reached its breaking point. "Jack," Zira said softly, her voice carrying across the space between them. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to fight me." Jack's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly am I supposed to do, Zira? Let you use me as your personal weapon? You've already taken so much from me." Zira flinched, as if his words had physically struck her. "I never meant to take anything from you. I never meant for this to happen. I only wanted to save my people. I thought I was helping. But I see now how wrong I was." Jack's gaze softened just a fraction. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, the pain in her voice, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. He couldn't ignore what had been done to him, to his body, his autonomy. He couldn't forget the moments where he had felt like nothing more than a pawn in her game. "You didn't just make a mistake, Zira. You used me," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with raw emotion. "I wasn't just a part of your plan. I was never a choice in any of this." Zira's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, Jack saw the full extent of her exhaustion. She wasn't just dealing with the weight of her planet's fate. She was carrying the guilt of what she had done to him, to Jack. She stepped closer, her hand trembling as she reached out, almost as if she wanted to touch him, but was too afraid to. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought I was doing the right thing. But now, I see how wrong I was to force you into this. I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. I just didn't know any other way." Jack swallowed hard, the weight of her apology hanging in the air like an invisible chain. He could feel the pull to forgive her, to give in and help her. But he couldn't. Not anymore. Not when his own soul felt so fractured from everything that had happened. The energy inside him pulsed, but Jack wasn't afraid of it anymore. He had learned to live with it, to control it, but he had also learned that it wasn't his responsibility to bear it alone. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unsaid words, with the weight of choices that had been made and ones that still hung in the balance. Jack's heart was heavy, torn between the person he was becoming and the person he had once been. Zira, sensing his hesitation, took a step back. "I understand if you can't forgive me, Jack. But please, don't let this power control you. Don't let it be the end of you." Jack looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in what felt like forever. Her pain, her desperation. It wasn't just about saving her people anymore. It was about redemption. For her. For him. He could feel the energy inside him. Still powerful, but no longer threatening. It was part of him now, and he couldn't deny it. He had spent so much time resisting it, fighting against it, but the truth was, it had changed him. He had changed. "I can't undo what's been done," Jack said finally, his voice firm, his decision clear. "But I can choose what happens next, and I choose to stop being a pawn in anyone's game. I choose to live my life, on my own terms." Zira's eyes searched his face, her breath catching. You can't turn your back on everything, Jack. My people." "I'm not turning my back on them," Jack interrupted, his gaze steady. "But I won't be your weapon. I won't be anyone's weapon anymore. If there's a way to save your people, you'll have to find it without me. I can't be a part of this anymore." Zira's shoulders dropped, and she closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering the last of her strength. When she opened them again, there was a quiet acceptance in her gaze. "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jack. And if this is your choice, then I'll respect it." The tension between them began to lift, but it didn't vanish entirely. There was still a fracture, a distance that couldn't be easily healed. Jack knew that what he was doing wasn't just about freeing himself. It was about finding peace with what he had become. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt like he was on the path to reclaiming his own future. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Zira," Jack said quietly. "But I can't be a part of it anymore." Zira nodded, her face unreadable. She stepped back, the distance between them widening with each passing second. And as Jack turned to walk away, he felt the energy inside him settle into a quiet hum, no longer overwhelming, but a part of him that he had learned to live with. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: he had made his choice, and it was his own.